Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. Here to wish you a very happy Morrissey Monday, a celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths. And before we get into today's topic, allow me to congratulate you for navigating your way through yet another football season. Is it me, or is it possible that football season just seems to drag on and on and on into infinity? I can tell you, at least according to my perspective, that the only good thing about the Super Bowl is that it draws an end to the football season. Never in my life before I moved to the Bible Belt has my life been so affected by this worthless sport. But out here, it truly is God, Trump, and football. Whenever I tell people that I moved out here from Oakland, California, I always get the same response. You must be a Raiders fan. I always think to myself, why? Why is that your only cultural reference? Don't you people have any intellectual curiosity at all? Anyway, that isn't really the point here today. The point is that, as you are very well aware, on Friday, Morrissey released the second single off of his upcoming album, Makeup is a Lie, an album which is slated to be released on March 6th. The second single is entitled Notre-Dame. This is a song that I actually very much like, unlike the first single, the title track off of the new album, Makeup is a Lie, which to me, the first few times I heard the first single off of the new album, it did not necessarily jump right out of the speakers, land on my face, and begin to squirm, but it was a slow burn, and over time, over the past couple of weeks, I will concede that is a song that I have slowly began to fall in love with. But the new single, Notre-Dame, which was just released on Friday, had basically the opposite effect on me. This was a song that pretty much immediately grabbed me by the testicles and pulled me right into its grasp. A song that I have been listening to over the course of the weekend, a song that I am very much in love with. Now, much like the original single, Makeup is a Lie, off of this album, I will say that if I have one quibble about the new song, it is pretty much one of the same arguments I had against the first single, Makeup is a Lie. That being that the lyrics to the song, Notre-Dame, have a tendency to get a little bit repetitive. Morrissey sort of repeats the same words over and over and over again. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that is a bad thing, but what it makes me wonder is, has the wordsmith run dry? Is he beginning to run short on lyrics? Now, according to a few things that I've read online, there is some controversy regarding the lyrics to the new song, Notre-Dame, that being that apparently Morrissey has slightly altered the lyrics compared to lyrics that he was performing when the song was played live. Now, whether or not that is true, I have no idea. I don't have any personal knowledge, because this is not a song that I saw live. Apparently, he deletes the word terrorism on the studio track compared to the track when it was being played live. Again, I don't know this firsthand. I have never seen the song live. I like the song. I like the song as it is. I think, based on the two songs that we have heard off of the new album, Makeup is a Lie, I think that this album is trending in a very positive direction, which raises the question. I was thinking about this as I was commuting to work yesterday, because yes, I think about these things, all right? I acknowledge the fact that I have no life, I have no friends, and I have no prospects, all right? I'm not trying to hide that from anybody. This is the stuff that I think about while I'm commuting to and from my place of employment. Is the new album, Makeup is a Lie, is it more likely to be a classic, or is it more likely to be a clunker? Now, in order to answer this question, we have to first answer a couple of other questions, the first of which is, has Morrissey, throughout the course of his career, whether it be with the Smiths or during the course of his solo career, has Morrissey ever truly released an album that is a clunker? An album that has virtually no positive traits to it at all? The answer to that question, at least in my opinion, is no. Now, there are two albums in Morrissey's canon that I have always sort of declared are my two least favorite. The first of which was released back in 1995, that being the album Southpaw Grammar. I've always said this, is at least in terms of the length, the lifespan of this channel, this has always been, for many, many years, has always been my least favorite album in Morrissey's catalog. To me, this is an album that is made up largely of filler. Of course, this album has two songs that are over 10 minutes long, and it has one song which begins with basically a 3-minute drum solo. So I've always said that, despite the fact that there is some good material on Southpaw Grammar, this is an album that, to me, I never go back and listen to. This is, in my opinion, this is about as weak an offering as Morrissey has ever thrown out there into the marketplace. I would sort of predict that this is as weak an album as Morrissey is capable of, creating. Now, this was a record that I bought way back, not immediately upon its release. Actually, this album did not come out in 1995. I misspoke. I believe this album came out in 1994. I'm sorry. I realize if I don't correct myself before the end of this video, people will be filling up the comment section, pointing out the fact that I got the date wrong. This album actually did come out in 1994, if I'm not mistaken. This was an album that I bought, though, pretty early in my Morrissey fandom, and at the time, it was a record that I liked a lot. It was a record that I listened to on a pretty heavy rotation. But as I continued to collect Morrissey albums as my fandom grew, of course, I've mentioned it on this channel many times in the past. I shall mention it again, because at the end of the day, any dead horse worth beating is worth beating beyond recognition. My Morrissey fandom was spawned in the spring of 1994, and that is around the time I began buying Morrissey albums. Now, I'm not exactly sure when it was in my personal chronology that I bought the album Southpaw Grammar for the first time, but it was pretty early on in my Morrissey record collecting career, and this was an album at the time I liked a lot. I listened to it on pretty heavy rotation, but as I began to collect more and more Morrissey material, this was a record that began to sort of drop down further and further and further in his canon in my eyes. And I would say at this point in time, this is an album that now basically firmly, it rests at the bottom of the Morrissey Ocean, right next to the Titanic wreckage. This is a record that I don't go back and listen to very often. Now, when I've and I don't want to defame this record, because I do think there is some good material on this record. I really love the song Reader Meet Author. I love the song Boy Racer. Boy Racer is probably my favorite song on this record. Dangin' 'Em Dave is a record that, or is a song, I should say, that I don't necessarily love. To me, Dangin' 'Em Dave is a song that sort of repeats the same lyrics over and over and over again, something we have seen from Morrissey from the first two singles off of the new album. Do Your Best and Don't Worry is a song that is passable. I don't think that it is a bad song. It is not to me an overly memorable track. And, Best Friend on the Payroll is a song that I could sort of live with or live without. In fact, when Morrissey was touring the United States this year, I believe that he was actually playing the song Best Friend on the Payroll, which I'm pretty sure is a song I've never seen live. And, despite the fact that it is a song that I could sort of live with or live without, I would be curious to see it live, because I'm always curious to see songs live that I haven't seen in the past. But to me, is Southpaw Grammar a clunker? I would say no. Is it Morrissey's weakest album? In my opinion, I would say yes. Now, somebody just recently left me a comment on this channel, not only defending the album Southpaw Grammar, but saying that in their opinion, this was Morrissey's greatest work. You and I need to have a conversation, son, because to me, That is math that simply does not add up. One point in time, somebody else also told me that the song Dangin' 'Em Dave was one of their favorite Morrissey songs of all time. That is something that I will simply never understand. To me, this record has too much filler. I get the sense that when Morrissey went into the studio to record Southpaw Grammar, he sort of realized that he did not have enough quality material to make a full-length album. So what he did, essentially, and this was an analogy I've made on this channel many times in the past, what he did, essentially, is he basically stretched the Kool-Aid. There's no reason for any Morrissey song to be 11 minutes long. There's no reason for any Morrissey to be 10 minutes long. There's no reason for any Morrissey song to open up with a 2-minute drum solo. Now, I understand it if you're a band like Rush or, oh my God, dare I say, Dream Theater. One of the worst bands of all time. Probably one of the worst shows I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, I went to go see Rush with a friend of mine when I lived in Seattle. And Rush is a band, I can tell you, Rush is a band that I am a sort of casual fan of. If I'm in the mood for Rush, I can boogie to some Rush. Now, my main quibble with Rush is probably pretty generic, that being the vocals of Geddy Lee. After I listened to Rush for about 45 minutes, I'm good for about 4 or 5 months. Dream Theater? Oh my God, one of the worst things in the history of the world. The same friend of mine I went to go see Rush with in Seattle, he was the Rush guy. He was absolutely obsessed with Rush. He was actually probably the most obsessed with a band person I've ever met in my entire life. But he took me one time to go see Dream Theater with him, and I can tell you, it took years off our friendship, son. That was something that I found to be quite unforgivable. So, yes, when bands like Rush and Dream Theater and other bands that are doing things that are proggy or technical, yes, I sort of understand it. I don't condone it all of the time, but I at least understand it when sometimes they have songs that drag on as long as football season. But for somebody like Morrissey, who's doing something that is relatively basic, pretty simple, I don't see the need for it. So to me, not a clunker, but certainly his weakest album. If I were going to nominate a second album for Morrissey that I think would be in the conversation as being his weakest, it would be his 2014 effort. World Peace is None of Your Business. This was an album, of course, I was very excited about when it was announced. I was very excited about this album for a lot of reasons. One, because it had been 5 years since Morrissey had released the album before this, and the album that came out before this, in my opinion, is an absolute classic. So my expectations for this record were a little bit elevated, seeing as it was following the album Years of Refusal. So I went out and I bought this album, of course, immediately the day it was released. I brought it home. I listened to it, and this was an album that basically just sat there. It never really did anything for me. It is still a record that to this day is probably my second least favorite album in Morrissey's canon. Now, it's not that it's a bad album. To me, it is an album that basically just sits there. It doesn't really do a lot. I would say if this album commits any crime, it's a little bit boring. Now, I will say that Southpaw Grammar, even though I think it is a slightly inferior album to World Peace, I don't think that Southpaw Grammar is necessarily boring. This is a record that, even though this record is going to be 12 years old this year, how is it that 2014 is 12 years ago? I'm mad now. Despite the fact that this record is 12 years old, this is a record that I've still never really figured out how I feel about. The only other record I can sort of compare this to in that sense is when I first bought Kill Uncle, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the third Morrissey record I bought early on in my fandom. Now, the first two Morrissey records I ever purchased, one was Bone a Drag, which is my favorite record of all time. Now, you can dismiss that record if you'd like, based on its compilation status, but I simply do not agree with that. The second album I ever bought was Your Arsenal, which again is absolutely classic Morrissey material. Now, Bone a Drag is my favorite record of all time. Your Arsenal is probably in my top 6 or 7. So when I bought Kill Uncle as my third Morrissey album, my expectations were very high. I brought it home. I listened to it, and at the time, it was a record that I found to be quite boring, a record that took many, many years to finally latch itself onto my barnacle-covered body, but a record now that I absolutely love, a record that I defend, a record that I think I probably like more than some other Morrissey records. If this record is ever going to grow on me at any point in time, the clock is ticking, son. Now, this was also a tour that I saw back in 2014, a tour that I would say probably not my least favorite Morrissey tour, but certainly one of them. I saw this tour in San Jose, California, and, I thought that the show was passable. It was pretty obvious watching Morrissey, though, that he was elsewhere. He was not necessarily engaged with the crowd. I didn't feel as if he was necessarily engaged with the show. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to San Jose, California, but it is not necessarily a place that I find to be overly inspiring. So whenever I'm in San Jose, I'm always daydreaming that I'm somewhere else also. So I was never really going to blame Morrissey for the fact that he seemed disinterested to be in San Jose, California. But I will say one thing about this tour that absolutely blew me away was he played the song Asleep. Not only one of the greatest Smith songs of all time, but a song up until that point I had never seen live. A song that up until that point I never thought that I would see live. And I remember when he went into Asleep, I was happy. I was like, I'm done. This is now one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. The question is, has Morrissey ever released a full-on clunker? If those are your two closest, I would say that the answer is no. Now, the other question you have to answer before considering whether the new album is more likely to be a classic or a clunker is, which is Morrissey's, up until this point in time, which is his latest classic album? The answer to that question is relatively simple as far as I'm concerned. Morrissey's last classic album, in my opinion, was released in 2009. It is the immaculate Years of Refusal, an album that I absolutely love. I never get tired of it. An album that is never too far out of my reach. An album that, I got to be honest with you, when it first came out, my expectations were a little bit tethered based on the fact that this record followed up Ringleader of the Tormentors, an album I've mentioned on this channel many times in the past is one of my lesser Morrissey albums. Now, it's certainly better than Southpaw Grammar or World Peace, but an album that was sort of a letdown when it first came out, an album that, to be honest with you, its expectations were probably a little bit unreasonably high based on the fact that it was following up You Are the Quarry, which in my opinion is Morrissey's greatest album post-2000. So when Years of Refusal came out, I was thinking to myself, okay, we'll see. We'll see. You Are the Quarry is simply one of the greatest records I've ever heard, and Ringleader of the Tormentors was, and kind of always will be a little bit of a disappointment. But I bought this record the day it came out. I brought it home. I listened to it, and before I even listened to it, I was just struck by the artwork. I love this album cover. I've heard other people criticize the artwork on this record. I do not understand that at all. I love the artwork on this record. I love the font. I love the photography. I love the liner notes. I took this record home. I listened to it, and it just immediately kicked me in the seeds. This was unlike anything that I had ever heard from Morrissey in the past. Now, keep in mind, Morrissey is somebody that never repeats himself. He does not live his life in the rearview mirror. His train is consistently moving forward, but in my opinion, this was something that I had never heard from him before. This record was loud, it was snotty, it was bratty, it was pissed off, and it was amazing. It still is. In my opinion, this is still Morrissey's last classic album, his second best album of the 2000s. I mean, every single song virtually on this album is a song that I absolutely love. I love Something Is Squeezing My Skull. I love Mama Lay Softly on the Riverbed. Black Cloud is a classic. Throwing My Arms Around Paris is amazing. All You Need Is Me is one of my favorite songs in Morrissey's canon. That's How People Grow Up is a song I really like a lot. One Day Goodbye Will Be Farewell. It's Not Your Birthday Anymore. Sort of a sequel to the song Unhappy Birthday by the Smiths. You Were Good in Your Time is awesome. Sorry Doesn't Help. I'm Okay by Myself. I mean, every single song on this record is, as the Zoomers like to say, an absolute banger. I would say the one, tiny, I mean, just minuscule speed bump on this album is the song When I Last Spoke to Carol, which to me is not even a bad song, but if I had to pick a weakest song off of Years of Refusal, that would be it. So, based on the first two songs that we have heard off of the new album, Makeup Is a Lie, I would say that although I'm not necessarily predicting it is going to be classic Morrissey material, I think we are trending more in that direction than we are in the direction of albums like World Peace and Southpaw Grammar. Now, I've mentioned my expectations for this album many times over the course of the past couple of weeks, so I don't necessarily need to rehash that again. Now, one thing I have not mentioned on this channel is my hopes for this new album. What I'm hoping is that this record sort of re-energizes me in my relationship with Morrissey, because if I'm allowed to be honest with you here this morning, I can tell you that right now I'm struggling with Morrissey a little bit. Not the music, mind you. The music is as magical today as it was the day I discovered it back in the spring of 1994. What I'm struggling with is Morrissey as the man. Morrissey is just a horrendous human being, and it is something that I am struggling with. I feel as if at times lately I have been grasping at my Morrissey fandom, which is sort of ironic in a way, because I've always preached that I like villains in rock and roll. I think that villains are important in rock and roll, but Morrissey takes it to a level which I find oftentimes hard to defend. I find myself at times feeling like one of those maggots who insist on twisting themselves into moral pretzels just to stay loyal to the dickless pumpkin. I don't love the fact that Morrissey has put me into this sort of predicament. So what I'm hoping is that this new album re-energizes me. It gets me re-excited about him and about my fandom, because the music is what it is. It simply is the greatest music in the history of rock and roll. And I will say that Morrissey's behavior over the last several years has taught me one very valuable lesson. That is, removing the artist from the art, because the music is something that I will love until the day I die. But the man right now, I'm having a very hard time with. I can't even listen to him interviewed. I hate seeing photographs of him. The other day, something was sort of circulating around social media. It was a picture of Morrissey in Paris holding the artwork for his newest album. Something a few years ago would have had me starching my trunks. But based on him and his behavior, it just sort of made my skin crawl. Looking at his smug face just made me very unhappy. I'm hoping that this new album gives me some sort of energy in terms of my fandom, because I don't want to be like this. I love you, Steve. I do. Anyway, Morrissey is scheduled to kick off his newest tour, or his current European tour, Friday, February 13th, which I believe is this upcoming Friday. I can't believe it. Now, this is going to sound like a stupid thing to say. I'm a stupid person, all right? I can't believe we're already into the second week of February 2026, but Morrissey is scheduled to kick off his European tour this Friday. I'm not exactly sure where. I've sort of lost interest in Morrissey's current tour. What did he play? 4 shows here in the United States out of 13? Good job, Steve. Awesome! Anyway, I am going to give Morrissey the benefit of the doubt, okay? I guess I just have the psychology of a domestic violence victim. I'm still going to give Morrissey the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to predict that Morrissey is going to play at least the majority of the shows that he is scheduled to play in Europe. I do believe, now this is something I've always believed, it's something I certainly believe. Nowadays, I certainly believe that Morrissey does enjoy playing Europe and the UK more than he does enjoy playing the United States. And looking around this dump right now, it isn't really that hard to imagine why with the people that are running this joint. So I will wish Morrissey good luck on his upcoming European tour. More likely, though, if you are a fan that is holding tickets to any of these upcoming events, I'm wishing luck to you. I genuinely hope that Morrissey shows up for you. I have had the opportunity throughout the course of my 30-year fandom to see the big dog 14 times. Those are experiences. If I never get a chance to see him live again, those are experiences that I would not trade for anything. If you are somebody that has not seen him yet and you have tickets and he shows up, I think that you are in for a life-altering experience. It is my goal to make it to 6 more shows before either Morrissey calls it a career or I have enough common decency to go tits up. Although 6 more shows throughout the course of whatever career Morrissey has left seems like it's going to be a bit of a stretch, honestly. But I am hoping that he does show up. He does treat the fans the way that they deserve to be treated over there in the UK and Europe. And like I said before, if you've not seen him and you have tickets, you are in for quite the experience. I'm very excited about the new album, man. I am. I'm going to be listening to the song Notre-Dame again all day today because I do think that both of the new songs off of the new record are honestly pretty snug. I'm feeling pretty good about this new record. I really am. As long as it's as good as Dog on a Chain or Low in High School or, it'll be better than World Peace, I can tell you that already. I'm not expecting it to be Years of Refusal, but as long as it's as good as Dog on a Chain, Low in High School, California Sun, I will be a very happy customer. Anyway, man, thank you so much for checking out this video. This is Archaic Records. My name is Jamie, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. Be sure to go out and support your local record store like Hard Copies in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Check back for Morrissey Monday, a celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths, as well as other record content and album reviews throughout the week. No? You're good? I'm good. You're good? I'm good. We're good. So, until next time, my friends. Talk to you then.